Welcome back to another episode of trying to identify the different types of CMM sensors. Last week we talked a lot about the chromatic white light sensor, which is a non-contact sensor, and today I'm going to dive us into a different type of non-contact sensor, one that a lot of people know in different capacities, which is going to be a camera sensor or a vision sensor. So let's drop off that chromatic white light sensor that we were dealing with last week, and let's grab our camera sensor or our vision probe that we have on our bridge CMM, and let's hop right into an example application. So you'll see here, I'm going to have this video on loop because it is running very, very fast. This is regular speed of the CMM. It is just collecting data very quickly. So cameras, what they do best is gathering 2D measurements. That is at the core what they do. However, they can do it extremely fast in the right circumstances. If you have good lighting, you can adjust the lighting on these sensors, you can adjust the focus on these sensors. They can adapt to those particular 2D features very, very well. They're not going to be useful for 3D measurement. So I think that cameras are often underutilized on a traditional CMM. I think that this is a type of sensor that more people could benefit from, especially when you're dealing with a lot of hole patterns or things like that that might take a long time in order to measure with a tactile probe. However, I do think cameras in the inspection room in general are overestimated in terms of their capability, their quality, and the type of data that they collect. But there's no denying how fast a camera can be. You can see it's just blasting through these different holes, one after the other after the other. And again, this is not sped up. This is normal speed of the CMM. So in general, they are very good for these 2D non-contact measurements. They do really well with small features that maybe a tactile probe has a hard time actually getting into. But that being said, they are limited in terms of how far they can focus, as well as how deep physically they can reach into a part. You see they're somewhat clunky and large, harder to get into a part. And of course, they can be used in conjunction with an articulating wrist at an angle or at different angles in the middle of a part program. You can also swap them on and off with different sensors, just like you saw at the beginning of this video, swapping from the chromatic white light sensor into the camera sensor. They could all be run in the same part program. So what are some typical applications that you might see for the camera that you would be using on your bridge CMM? Typically, you might see this in electronics, so things like measuring PCBs and the holes on those PCBs. A lot of 2D measurements being done just in the general manufacturing space or aerospace field for machined parts. If you're going to have, let's say, castings with a bunch of holes that you're going to tap into it, you could use it for that. But it pairs really well when in conjunction with some sort of tactile sensor. So maybe you're going to use a physical tactile probe or a scan probe to come in and grab points on a part. And then you're going to be using the camera sensor in order to grab the two-dimensional measurements or the circles and perimeter measurements that you might be grabbing on a given feature. They also do well just in general with lower accuracy type of applications. You can think things like plastics or composites or sheet metal, where maybe you don't have to rely on such tight tolerances that you might be getting focusing down into the tenths. You might be focused instead on plus or minus 5, plus or minus 10, plus or minus 15. These do exceptionally well within those ranges. So I'll finish up here with the vision or the specifications of these. This is for the Hexagon camera, and I cannot stress this enough. This is the camera that goes on a bridge CMM, not a primary vision machine that might also have a tactile sensor. So the camera systems that you might add on after the fact or later on onto a CMM are going to have an accuracy of about 8 microns or about 5 microns for probe error of the imaging or of the image. And in general, you saw how fast they move. They whip around apart, but they really are well suited for those 2D measurements. So hopefully you learned a little something today about adding a camera probe to your tactile CMM and potential uses that you might get out of it. Let me know if there's another type of probe that you want to dive into,